Hey everyone, Dr. Bob Rowe again. Came across some other interesting facts on what's happening in the future of medicine, which is coming up really soon. So have a look at this intro. Uh, there are so many new technologies coming up, almost hard to believe, but these experts have been right when they've predicted things before. So just have a look at it. And get a feel for what will be out there. And remember, your regular medical doctors or other health professionals don't usually follow these things. So, because there hasn't been that many views of this particular presentation. So, when you look at it, your friends, if you discuss it with your friends, might think you're a little bit crazy. But really, take a look at it. These are the world's experts on this technology and what's happening and what to expect. And they've been pretty accurate in the future. So you might have to, again, look at it 3 or 4 times, but a lot of good information there.
In healthcare, we're seeing the incredible rise of what's called the quantified self. We're tracking more and more data streams coming off our bodies. This is one of the more fascinating things happening in healthcare. This is the Tricorder X Prize, which I mentioned last year. It's a $10 million prize for when your handheld device can beat 10 board-certified doctors in doing a diagnosis. Well, here's the incredible thing. This prize was won 5 months ago. In April, there was a winner. So we now have a handheld device that will beat 10 board-certified doctors at doing a diagnosis. Think of the implications of this on rural areas where it's hard to get to a doctor, or emerging markets like in Africa where you have a doctor per million citizens. This is completely transformational, right? And I love the joke that if you're a hypochondriac, you'll love this device, right? In fact, you'll buy 2 of them because one of them must be wrong. It'll be chaos while we figure that out. Now, here's an interesting challenge if you want to try this out. Go tell your doctor this exists and watch the immune system response. You'll see this cognitive dissonance wall slam down. They'll say, that's impossible. I've spent 7 years in medical school. There's no way a device could beat me in doing something like this, right? Now, if you're a cancer doctor, there are 2,500 cancer research papers published per day. Okay, 2,500 published papers on cancer research per day. You have no hope in hell of keeping up with that volume of research, which is why we need this type of capability to complement. And what's interesting here is we found that the best performance, say in chess, an AI isn't the best performance. Actually, an AI merged with a human being is actually the best performer. So the best chess-playing teams now are an AI supplementing a human being. And we expect that to happen with medicine and other areas very dramatically. As one of my favorite kind of side effects, it turns out that just by listening to the tone of your voice, they've done a bunch of research with the Mayo Clinic, the healthcare medical clinic, and they found that we can now predict cardiac events just from the tone of your voice. And so we'll see some fascinating breakthroughs in diagnosis from this, where just from the tone of your voice, we'll be able to predict a cardiac event and whether somebody's going to have a heart attack or not. So just kind of incredible what we're seeing. Every week something comes out that our entire faculty goes, holy crap, can you now do that? And we're seeing this incredible set of breakthroughs happen, right? So this causes incredible sexiness on the technology side. We can talk a lot of that for a long time. By the way, we expect to break the aging barrier in about the next 5 to 10 years. So today, per calendar year that goes by, we're adding about 3 months to average lifespan. But with all of the stem cell therapies, treatments, organ replacements, etc., gene therapies, we expect to get to a point where we increase that more and more, and we'll get to a tipping point where per calendar year that goes by, we'll add more than a year to your life. Right? Now, when we hit that point, it means that we can essentially live for an arbitrarily long period of time, because per calendar year, I'm adding more than a year to your life. Just as an example, I have a friend with a kidney problem. They're giving him drugs to stabilize his kidney for 2 years because they know the medicine will be available to stabilize him for another 5 years after that. So you don't have to solve the whole thing, you just have to get to the next hop. And our best guess on the when of this is about 10 to 12 years. Okay, so within 10 to 12 years, maybe 15 at the worst, we'll have treatments that can have us live for an arbitrarily long period of time. Again, this is going to be an inflection point that we will never have seen in the history of humanity. and will challenge all sorts of things. Because the technology is all sexy, but we are not ready as a society to absorb any of this. How do you deal with people living for a very long time? Most religions are selling heaven as a business model, right? How do you sell heaven if nobody's dying? That's going to be kind of a challenge. I use the joke of marriage as another example. You know, we invented marriage about several thousand years ago. When marriage first surfaced as an institution, average lifespan was about 25 years old. So when we first kind of created marriage, you got married, you had kids, and you died. Marriage is not designed to last 50, 60 years. That's state-sanctioned torture, basically. And so dealing with these as a society is something we're going to have to do in a very, very new way. Every regulatory framework and every mechanism that I can see in terms of how we manage ourselves is fundamentally broken today. Democracies don't work in an age of an abundance of information and the pace of it. Our monetary systems, our legal systems, our healthcare systems, intellectual property is broken. We're going to have to reinvent ourselves pretty much from the ground up. Now, our brains freak out and our amygdala freaks out when we hear this, but actually the world is an infinitely better place than we've ever seen it. Here's extreme poverty, which was literally almost the entirety of humanity 200 years ago. Bill Gates thinks we will have eradicated extreme poverty within 12 years. And you will not see this in the news because it's good news. Here's just the last 100 years driven by technology. We can see the most incredible progress in maternal mortality, infant mortality, and so on. So we get really excited about this. We believe technology is a major driver of human progress. Right? Actually, maybe it's the only major driver we've ever seen. And now that we have a dozen of these moving at a very accelerated pace, we get very, very excited. Another domain that we like to look at is biotech. Here's the graph of reading DNA that I mentioned to you very dramatically. One of the most incredible breakthroughs that's happening today in biotech is this technology, CRISPR, which I think I mentioned last year. This continues to run incredibly, fascinatingly, accelerating in a very dramatic way. We have essentially now reversed, so it turns out bacteria do not suffer from viruses. And this is the basic mechanism here. And for a long time, we wondered, how are they doing this? How do bacteria protect themselves against viruses? And it turns out they evolved a very elegant way of when a virus shows up, they store the DNA of the virus, and when a new one comes along, they literally edit it out of themselves. And so bacteria have created a self-editing mechanism to kind of modify their own genes. We have now reverse engineered this. Okay? And we can now edit the human genome as easily as you can cut and paste in a Word document. And this is really freaking out the world's bioethics folks, because this essentially means that a human being is now a software engineering problem. Very, very fascinating. The Chinese are already editing embryos in the womb. Literally a few months ago, scientists found you could edit HIV right out of somebody's cells, which is quite incredible, especially in your part of the world. And actually the most interesting thing that came out was a research report. So we all have inside of us 6 or 8 very bad genes that give us high propensity for heart disease, breast cancer, lung cancer, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it turns out if you use this capability just to delete those 6 or 8 bad genes, just that will extend human lifespan by about 60 years. Okay, just that. And so we're looking at some radical possibilities coming along. The opportunities here are quite staggering. If a child is born with sickle cell anemia, you can literally edit it right out of them, right? And I go back to that software engineering kind of paradigm to look at this. Every wet lab in the world is playing with this today. This is widely understood, extremely inexpensive. And so we're going to see some incredible breakthroughs happen around this area. Now here's the way I like to frame it. On the left there you see an ear of corn, which we're very familiar with. On the right is actually what an ear of corn looked like a few thousand years ago before we started breeding the heck out of it to be bigger, juicier, sweeter, etc. And this is the film photography analogy. You know, for thousands of years we've been crossing dogs, cats, horses, plants to select for the traits that we want. That's the film photography analogy. We've now gone to the digital photography version of biology. Now we can model an organism in software and print out its DNA and so on. And so with this kind of breeding to digital biology, film photography to digital photography analogy is what we're seeing here.